So quantum human design really looks at it from a more evolutionary empowered languaging. Karen talks so much about narrative and your story, and how can you shift your story from that lower expression to more of a higher expression of who you want to be. And so I just went in and I learned everything and all the archetypes of my defined gates and all of this information. And I cried through it because I finally felt seen. A lot of times in appointments, there are a lot of tears because they finally feel seen for who they are. And it can be scary. I mean, but it also, I always tell my clients, there's a place of the unknown, but there's also a place of awe. And if we can get to that place of awe about things and wonder and really go, wow, this is who I am. I wonder what it would feel like to step into that.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to Boom Vision. We've got a great guest today, Heather Fischer-Page, who is a holistic wellness mentor. From being a quantum human design expert, EFT, and hypnotherapy, Heather serves her clients through what she calls the Integra Wellness Method, addressing the whole you, from mind to body to spirit and soul. What is the human design modality? How is this different from a personality test? And more importantly, how can this help you unlock your potential? You'll definitely want to tune in to hear what Heather has to share on how human design resonates with her clients. Let's cue the intro. Welcome to the Boom Vision Podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Ye. This show is about how you can thrive. It's when you build success in alignment with your mind, body, and soul. I created this podcast to give you perspectives and frameworks on how to strengthen your mindset and gain clarity in your purpose. It's time for you to live an extraordinary life with vision that you design. Let's get to work. Awareness is the greatest agent for change. This quote was by Eckhart Tolle. Welcome to episode 26 of the Boom Vision Podcast. Folks, I am happy to share today's interview with Heather Fischer-Page. Heather is a new friend that I'm blessed to get introduced through one of my previous guests, Kate Mahoney, in episode 22. After our initial discovery call and receiving a human design reading from Heather, I knew she would be a great addition to our show. As a brief background, Heather has always had a love of learning, understanding herself and others from a mind, body, spirit, and soul perspective. Having experienced through her own health challenges, Heather knew that there was more involved in the holistic healing process. This led to Heather enrolling in a program called Food and Spirit by Dr. Deanna Minnick, which combined nutrition with body, mind, and spirit techniques that allowed her to approach the whole person. Heather also practiced emotional release techniques such as EFT and hypnotherapy, as well as subtle body energy healing. As her own healing path evolved, Heather studied human design and further quantum human design, where she finally connected with her own life purpose. This knowledge, wisdom, and experience gives her the tools to guide and lead her clients to tap into their own way of being, shift and transform any blocks that may be holding them back, and gain a clear understanding of their life's purpose. So without further ado, here's Heather. Heather Fischer-Page, welcome to the Boom Vision Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited to be with you.
Thank you, Heather. And for those of you that don't know, I was initially connected with you with the previous guest, Kate Mahoney. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very grateful that Kate was able to connect us both. I think what came about it was I was looking for a human design expert because I learned about that modality and I wanted to just have a better understanding. And so I'm so grateful that she connected us. I guess before we begin, Heather, why don't, if you can, share a little bit about your origin story? Talk a little about, your personal, professional background. Where did it all
Sure.
start? And what led you to the path that you're currently on today?
Wow. Okay. Well, I always say you never know at 20 what you might be doing today, because I have had such a really adventurous kind of different career path. I actually in college started out as a vocal performance major and really enjoyed the choir part and the community part of it. And then my dad said, "So, what are you going to do with this?" And so I started working on a business degree, and I was like, "This is not me," and ended up with a communications public relations degree, which I thought, oh, wow, that would be fun, because I have a lot of friends who were musicians. I thought I could work with them or work somewhere. And jobs just kind of started coming at the right time. I worked for an alternative news weekly, doing marketing and promotions for them. And I ended up at the classical station in Kansas City, worked in sales and marketing at that time, and not realizing how much of an introvert I was, but really bumping up against that resistance to cold calling and going out and making small talk. And then an opportunity came to work at we have a conservatory of music in Kansas City, at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And I worked there for a little over 3 years and really enjoyed the experience there. And the people, every job was really about the people and the connections that I made. And somebody offered me a job at a music production company, and that really wasn't me. Ended up back in grad school getting an interpersonal communications degree, because I wanted to understand how people worked and how people communicated. So I got that and moved on and never really used it until now. I worked as a visual merchandising designer for 2 major corporations, and through some health challenges, really decided that it was time for me to make a shift. And I had studied food and nutrition because of my own health challenges throughout my life, and went to the Nutritional Therapy Association and got a functional nutritional therapy practitioner certification, and started making my own food because I'd been gluten-free for a while and really had focused on that whole foods because I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. And I had learned how to make things taste good and how to make it colorful. And I had little kids at that time too. And I'm like, I really wanted to make sure they were getting nutrient dense meals. So finding creative ways to do that was fun. Through that, I did a lot of healing, but I also had been introduced to energy healing, energy work. And it was through the Barbara Brennan School, Hands of Light, and her way of spiritual healing. And I saw how that helped me so much. I could maintain my health with the diet supplementation, but really shifting some of those energetic conditioning pieces through EFT and then through the healings, I was able to really feel vital and just have that vitality that I was looking for. And each layer at piece really kind of motivated me more. So I did a program through Dr. Deanna Minnick. She is just really straddles beautifully the science and spirituality side. And she is, if you look her up, she works with Dr. Jeffrey Bland a lot. And she did a food and spirit practitioner program. And it was great because it really looked at the rainbow of foods, but also through the chakra system, and the systems of health. So it was wonderful. And that just kind of led me into this another amazing community of people. So I was doing all of those things, and 2020 hit, and my nutrition clients, it just it just sunk. And I was like, okay, I'm at the point where something new, something's got to change. And I'd kind of been looking at human design and reading about it and diving a little more deeply into who I was. And I was doing some of the quantum alignment system classes that Karen Curry Parker, she is the quantum human design mentor and founder. And I started doing some of her alignment system classes where we were using EFT and we were looking deeply at integrity and just resiliency and all of these wonderful things. And I thought, you know what, I'm going in, I'm going to do it. And I ended up starting to get my specialist certifications. There's 4 levels of it, and started doing that, as well as working with a spiritual mentor and learning hypnotherapy, and really started feeling like it was all coming together. That's kind of what's led me to where I am now. And it's so funny because everything, the energy healing certification is winding down. I have like 2 more classes for that. I just finished up the quantum human design. And so it's all coming to where it's time to really step into it. And I couldn't be more fortunate and grateful for where I am at this point. So.
Wow, that is such a beautiful chronological order of just what led to where you are today. So thank you so much for sharing that, Heather. One of the takeaways I got from what you just shared, what was really interesting, is that because of the health implications or complications that you were going through on your physical body, going through something like the NTA and the nutrition route helped you get better understanding of what fuel you want to really input in this physical body, this vehicle that you're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I got was, but as you evolved, what's going to be the fuel that actually fuels the driver? And that's when you did the energy work that brought into vitality. And so I just wanted to reiterate that distinction because, you know, we're all on this spiritual journey, and really fascinating to hear that because I see certain patterns of, you know, people that are in the energy work and what kind of led them there. And so thank you so much for sharing that. And so that kind of leads to my next question, which is, have you always known this was your soul's path, or was it that one thing led to another, as you described, where because of a certain inflection point, that's what led to this path? I mean, you mentioned about 2020, and because of that, okay, the world kind of was put on pause. Your nutrition, you know, business sort of also took a different turn. Do you feel that was a major contributor, or would you have been on this path anyways, regardless?
Well, I was kind of on a path that I've always known deep down that this was part of me. But because of conditioning, we all have it. You know, our parents are trying to do the best. I remember as a kid having like these intuitive hits or downloads, and I'd get in trouble for knowing stuff. And so I think I shut it down because I think it shocked them. I think it, you know, it's kind of scary when your kid comes and goes, oh, hey, I'm seeing something here, or I know this, and I spit it out. And so, and I don't think that they meant to, but, you know, being a sensitive being that I was, it was like, oh, okay, I'm not supposed to do this. So
can you give an example actually of that? That's, I mean, I'd love to dive in deeper on that. Like just one example that comes into mind.
Well, I remember a memory popped up for me not too long ago where I just like spirits, you know, seeing spirits, seeing other beings. And I had this magical room. I just remember this room being very magical to me, my childhood room from like 3 to 8. And a memory popped back in, not too long ago, of it being very magical, where that was my space to go. And, you know, I could be who I was, seeing sometimes spirits and things like that. And that scares you when you're, you know, that started happening more again when I got older, and it would scare me, you know, just because it's the middle of the night and there it comes in. It's like, I don't know what to do with you. But then I was taught how to work with that energy. And I think it started then, but really, and I think part of the health issues probably were because I wasn't doing everything that my soul's purpose was wanting me to do. It was, you know, I was trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be, you know, society. parents, everything. And so, yeah, fast forward to 2020, I was working on a cookbook, my own cookbook, really focusing on colorful foods and based on some cleanses that I had written. And I just wasn't into it. And I kept trying to do it. And my dad would encourage me. And I was working on it and working with a cookbook editor. And all of a sudden I was like, March hit. Everybody's trying to use the internet at the same time. I have 2 kids who are trying to use it. I couldn't, use a Adobe program at the same time. I'm like, you know what? I think it's time for me to just put this aside. It might come back sometime. It's not a failure, but maybe it's going to look differently. And no, it wasn't that smooth at that time. I kind of was like, I don't know what's going on. And it kind of was that moment of kind of that crisis point of, okay, what do I do now? And I'm like, okay, I think self-care came to me. And that's really when I started taking some of those quantum alignment program classes. And I was like, I'm really just going to dedicate my time to myself, and figuring out why I'm stuck, what's going on. And once I did the specialist classes, really, that was a journey in itself of discovery. So there have been those like catalyst points in my life that have happened where it's been like, okay, it's time to shift. And I'm very grateful for them. Sometimes they don't feel that great. Sometimes they can be big. And sometimes they can be like, oh, okay, let's tweak that a little bit. But, I've had those moments where it's really is kind of that time where it's time for me to move up in my evolutionary path. So.
Got it. Well, I'm glad you listened in on your intuitive gut feeling to progress to that next step, right? As you evolve, because I mean, I can really relate to your story because I was my 2.0 version of my second chapter came to the point when I had my vision that, wow, there's a element of this. I think this is a culture's path. This is my parents' path. It's not a path that my soul wanted to be on. So I get it. It. Yeah. And so now I know you're a holistic wellness mentor, but speak a little bit about, for those that are new to this modality called human design, right? So I'm a newbie at this. What is it? Is it science? Is it woo? Is it a mix of both?
Oh, I think it really is a mixture of both. It is. So it was a download. So here we go with the woo for Ra Uru in 1987. There was a huge consciousness up-leveling that happened at that time. And he wanted this to be available for people to kind of initiate them into a new way of being. He was guided to use the I Ching, which is an ancient modality, the Kabbalah, the Hindu chakra system, which is the 9-centered system, and quantum physics, and then astrology is in there because, we calculate through your birth time and place and day. So it's really a conglomeration of all of those things that really become this interesting blueprint of who you are. It takes into, different archetypes of the gates and channels and gives you information on how to really be in the world. It's about being in the world. It's not about what you're doing. It's not like I'm going to go into your chart and say, hey, you should be a train conductor or whatever. It's really about how you're supposed to show up in the world. And it really is a practical system because it does give you your type, and that type has a certain strategy and how how you make decisions and how you show up in the world or respond in the world. And it gives you some practical information that you can use that is like the first step for maybe deconditioning from old patterns, old stories, old narratives that have been told to you, and really help you shift into your authentic self.
Thank you for the explanation. And
sure.
And I want to share with my audience too. When I invite someone onto my show, and if it's a new modality I don't know of, I want to experience myself so I can understand really what is it about. And it also helps me do my homework on how to really ask the best questions for the interview. And what I wanted to share with my audience is that, prior to our interview before, we actually did a session where you gave me a human design session. And I want to share this with my audience so that they can understand. There's other personality tests like MBTI or DISC personalities. And oftentimes when I talk to other fellow coaches or even my clients, what I say is that it's oftentimes difficult, not impossible, but oftentimes difficult to read your own label when you're inside your own jar. And that's why being able to ask for outside perspective will give you a better idea and different perspectives to think about. And I see DISC, personality, MBTI, those are all great to help you understand and decode what label you actually have in your own jar. But what I found fascinating when I had the human design session with you, Heather, is that for me, it went just one level deeper because it was almost like, are you strawberry jam or are you blueberry? What's at the core of my soul? And the one analogy that comes into mind, because oftentimes on my show, I always use the car analogy, right? Business or career is like a car, it's a vehicle, but it's always never about the car, it's always about the driver. And sometimes I view, there is definitely, not to discount personality tests, because there definitely is a place for it. But personality test, to me, the analogy would be equivalent of what color car do you have? Are you in a Jeep? Are you in a convertible? Are you in a minivan? What is that, right? And because when you know that, what is the best way to best bring out the performance in your car and vehicle, right? But when I think about human design, I think of like, well, but who's the driver? What are you meant to be driving? A convertible? Are you meant to be driving a minivan? Are you meant to be flying an airplane? What vehicle really best serves you? Because when you were sharing the results of my human design reading, I was like, oh my God, that feels right. I just, now it's just, part of it maybe is validation. Part of it's like, oh, okay, now knowing this, how do I lean into that? Because I didn't realize that was it. So I just wanted to share that with my audience, because for me, this is fairly new, but it's just fascinating to really understand, wow, there's this whole new modality called human design, but how does that apply to my life, And so that leads to my next question, which is, what is the difference between traditional human design and quantum human design? And how would you say that overall, as I mentioned, would be different from either a personality test like MBTI or like a DISC personality?
Well, why don't I start with human design versus like a personality test? So I think not every personality test out there, trying to figure out myself. I did MBTI, I did the Enneagram. I studied astrology for 25 years, really kind of wanting to understand, why did I feel so complex? Why? And why did I react in a certain way or respond in a certain way and another person may not? So, and those were all really helpful. They were, but they only went so far for me, and they resonated. I mean, MBTI really resonated with me, where I, really kind of studied all of the levels. But for me, human design really looked at, gave you a little bit of a map of who you are. If we're using I like the driving metaphor, because you kind of can, because, you kind of get this map of, oh, wait, I'm this type. I'm supposed to do this. My learning style is this. Okay. But I've always been trying to learn this way, but no, this is a better way to learn. Oh, and why, if I say yes here and then I get home and I think no, why is that happening? But also seeing some of the, when you get into a little bit more depth in it, you look at, your past life story, you're like, oh, no wonder when I, have a download and it comes out, people might be a little shocked or whatever it is, that is part of me. And personality tests in general really do validate who you are, but there's something about human design and getting to see that depth of who you are. And I think when we did yours, we could see the archetype flowing through and how the planets affected how it expressed that archetype of that gate from the I Ching. So I think it has some depth. It can be a very simple program, but then you can, as you are getting more and more validated and going, wait a second, okay, now that's not feeling right. I think it's time. Maybe there's some conditioning around that. How can I be more in a higher expression of something? So I think it has a nice, simplistic plan that can then be worked with step by step as you are shifting into really who you are more consciously. Now, traditional human design and quantum human design, Karen Curry Parker, who is the founder of quantum human design, she worked with Ra. She worked with him. She was a student of Ra. She worked with him for many, many years. And the languaging was really designed to wake people up. You know, you look at the I Ching, it's really based a lot on the I Ching. So those archetypes of those gates, that's ancient languaging. And so Karen has mentioned many times that Ra wanted to shift the languaging so that you had like the shadow side or the not self side into the more evolutionary side. So quantum human design really looks at it from a more evolutionary empowered languaging. Karen talks so much about narrative and your story and how can you shift your story from that lower expression to more of a higher expression of who you want to be. And it's just it's beautiful. And when I do a session, I always use both traditional and quantum human design because the person's going to resonate with what feels right to them. So I would never leave traditional human design behind because I'm all about using the original, but I really like the language that can be expressed and those steps that maybe if you don't feel like you're right there quite yet, you have a way shower to that higher expression. And then we can look at ways to decondition you, help you decondition. I'm just here as a guide. I'm here as just kind of the guide and the mentor. And then I give you tools.
Yeah,
so.
I love that. And Heather, what's coming to me as I'm listening to you, it's almost like this, and this probably dates, my age a little bit, but, back before we had smartphones, back before we had Google Maps and Waze app, we had the Thomas Guide, right? We had the old-fashioned Thomas Guide that, before we go on any road trips, I remember my dad would throw that in the car because if we ever got lost, at least we have a Thomas Guide, an actual physical map to actually, help us guide us, right? And what came to me as I'm listening to you talk is that it's almost like the traditional human design is like the old-fashioned Thomas guides, like, hey, and it's a physical touch of it to be able to see it, to know how to help you direct, versus maybe the quantum human design is still based on the same principles, but then the labeling of it might be like upgrading to a Waze app using Google Maps. And it both serves the same purpose, but depending on where people are at, because sometimes people need that physical touch to be able to register. Some people actually want to be directed. Give me the voice and I'll listen to that. And so that's sort of the parallels that I see kind of based on what you were just sharing,
Yeah, definitely. And, we were always encouraged to study under other teachers and other mentors so that we did have all of this basis and this foundation so that we could speak the language the way that the client needed us to.
Yeah,
so
that's beautiful.
It's all important. Yeah.
Awesome. I'd love to kind of hear, do you have any major breakthrough stories or, with your clients that they've experienced after they've heard their first human design reading? Anything that you're able to share, without using names, but I'd love to kind of give people sort of a flavor of what has happened for people that have experienced that reading and how has that impacted in their lives?
Yeah. I think I always have people have tissues when they are on because it does wake up your soul. I mean, especially for me, when I first found human design, which was like back in probably 2018, I just devoured it through a book. I hadn't had a reading yet. I devoured it through a book, and I'm one of those people who it's in my chart. It's all over my chart where I have to know all the things. And so I just went in and I learned everything. And all the archetypes of my defined gates and all of this information. And and I cried through it because I finally felt seen, and a lot of times in appointments, there are a lot of tears because they finally feel seen for who they are. And it can be scary. I mean, but it also, I always tell my clients, there's a place of the unknown, but there's also a place of awe. And if we can get to that place of awe about things and wonder and really go, wow, this is who I am. I wonder what it would feel like to step into that.
Yeah.
And so I really encourage clients that's why I always send session recordings and notes, because I want people to integrate it, be able to integrate it, embody it, and have it as part of them. And I think really I had a client not too long ago who she really just felt it and just felt where she was missing out, where she was not on that trajectory that her soul wanted to be on. And so it was big. And so, one of my pieces really is to sit and hold space for people during these appointments. But also, I've worked with a lot of holistic health professionals because, I do a lot of webinars with them. And I would go into the sessions thinking, oh, I wonder how much they're going to learn, from this. But they learned a lot. And one said, oh, I'm a projector. I'm supposed to be invited. I've always been pushing through. I'm like, well, and she's like, no wonder I'm tired all the time. Why I don't have energy. These different things, those aha moments for them are important. And then there's fun ones where I did one for one of my friends, and she's also my EFT, not mentor, but she does my EFT for me. She is in her 70s, and she's like, finally, I can tell people that this is the way I am because I am the director, and they can like it or they can lump it, so it's just really fun for her to see, step into that piece of herself that she's always known as who she's supposed to be, but sometimes she pulled back from because she didn't want to hurt feelings, even though she was coming from a heart-centered place. It's always we always have to remember when we're coming from heart-centered place that it's, if somebody's not ready for it, you may not get the reaction that you were hoping for. So
right.
Anyway, yeah, those are kind of, it's these beautiful aha moments, I think, for people are the big ones. And they can bring up tears, but they can also bring up some really empowered feelings.
Yeah. Beautiful. So Heather, you mentioned an acronym, and I want to just make sure the audience also knows what that means. You said EFT. What does EFT stand for? That way, so in case people have never heard of that.
Yes, it is emotional freedom technique, and or some people call it tapping. Again, there are many people who have offshooted from from emotional freedom technique, and that's who my mentor studied through. But tapping, whoever you do it through, it is an amazing way to shift energy, trauma, thought forms out of the body, because you're tapping on the meridians and helping shift that energy through and let it release and work on those layers of conditioning or memories that might be holding you back.
Yeah.
So I always encourage people to find what resonates with them when they're doing different things. So
oh man, I'm feeling the goosebumps when it's telling me something. I feel like we probably can spend another full hour on that topic alone. So without being too sidetracked with scroll syndrome, I love to. I think maybe we do need to bring you back for that topic alone, because I feel like there's really something there. But just kind of bring it back to human design again. Let's give our audience a little taste of that. So what I mean by this is that you're a alchemist or a generator, right? And I'm a emotional projector, or what's called orchestrator. Now, I know these terms might not mean much for the audience that are unfamiliar with human design, but can you tell me a little bit about your type and my type so that people get a glimpse of, hey, what does that mean? And does that resonate?
Yeah, so I am a generator in traditional human design. In quantum human design, I'm called an alchemist. And we are kind of here to do the work of the world, what lights us up. And we have this incredible superpower that gives us nice decision making in the moment most of the time. I mean, I'm going to put that caveat in there. But we also have this energy. The reason we were called generators is because we have sacral energy that gives us energy when we're doing things that are lighting us up to keep going, to have that focus and that drive to keep going, and the energy more than drive, it's more that energy. And so, and you mentioned you were an emotional projector. I'm an emotional generator. So that goes into your strategy and your authority as far as decision making goes. And so there's something called an emotional wave when you're an emotional authority, and riding your emotional wave to make sure that your yes stays a yes is important. Because we know we can be in a situation where we're out with our friends, and they say, hey, you want to join us and to do this? And you're like, yeah, that sounds great. And then you get home and you're like, wait a second. Oh, dang it. You kind of have that regret.
Yeah.
And so riding that emotional wave and making sure you're not up on that highway when you do say yes is important. And all my clients that have emotional authority, I'm like, the best thing you can ever do is say, let me get back to you. That sounds awesome. And I might want to join, but let me get back to you. Let me go home and check you don't have to make an excuse, but I always say, let me get back to you. And so it's important with emotional waves to make sure that you do that. For you are a projector in traditional human design. In quantum human design, you are the orchestrator. You're here really to guide and direct people and share wisdom with them when they ask for it. For you, it's really, your strategy, where my strategy is to respond to things in my outer world after I get the inspiration. Yours really is to wait for the invitation and wait for the person, the thing to show up for you. And so when we do that, when we really align with our type and our strategy and our authority, we can, that's a huge piece just right there. That can get us on that path, taking those steps forward. And then once we get to the forest where the trees start getting thicker, and we're like, whoa, then we can start breaking down other parts of the chart and looking at maybe the conundrums and why something might be holding us back. So, and, in the first session, we do some of that, talk a little bit about areas of possible conditioning, but also themes maybe that have gone on in your life. But really, type, strategy, and authority are really important. And even when I was in my level 4 classes, Karen would always say, remember, go back to type, strategy, and authority. Always tell your clients if something's not going right, are they using their strategy in the right way? And usually that would can help someone shift back, to where they are. So it's really important, so you have this nice basis for doing things, and it really helps you with that alignment and the flow and trusting in right timing. And going, oh, wait, I'm supposed to, maybe right now isn't the right timing. Hey, what can I do? Ooh, a little self-care might be good right now, or, a little study right now to help me move to that next piece. So,
I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Heather, for explaining that, because I think what I'm feeling right now, I'm feeling all these vibrations, is that it's almost like by knowing your type, the imagery that comes into mind is it gives you a glimpse. Is your fuel unleaded? Is it diesel? Or are you solar powered? Right? Because when you have that clarity of what drives you in terms of really helping you in that performance wise, then it's like, oh my God, I've been looking at diesel the whole time, but I should have been solar powered. And it made so much sense in a sense when you flash back on those times when I were solar powered. Yeah, it gave me such more not just drive, but also distance and where I can go. And so that's what comes to me when you're talking about just understanding your type and what's your strategy. When I distill it, pun intended, but when I distill it to the type of fuel that you have,
Right.
fuel that gives you not just at moments of clarity, but also knowing then how do I move forward in the best possible way.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's a great way to explain it. And knowing, and everything's all about energy, and and yeah, that does get into woo, but it really doesn't, because everything is energy. We know magnets are energy, and so we are magnetized to certain peoples. So when we're in other people's energy, how does it feel? Oh, wait, you as a projector, with an open sacral, when you're in my energy, you get to use my sacral energy a little extra to give you a little bump up. You can utilize that to be more sustainable. So it's really interesting, to sense into that and see.
Yeah.
And, when we're around certain people, do we get tired? Or when we're around certain people, do we get, energized? It's, you figure out whose energy is the energy you want to be in. So, and it's not woo. It's all about, it goes back to science. It's very scientifically proven. So.
Yeah. And what I love about this too, Heather, is that it also boils down to just in your core, does it feel like it resonates or it doesn't? Regardless if you have a belief of is seeing believing or believing seeing, it just sounds like when you can just feel it in your core. And that's for me what happened to me when I had a session with you. I just had this inner knowing of, oh wow, that really feels right. And when you can lean in on that, it's just, you're not pre-filtering whether your conscious mind, whatever it is, on like, wait, do I believe this or not? It's just, wait, does it feel right? And usually that gives you an inner guidance on, yeah, you're on the right path or you're in your course correct.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So for our listeners that are seeking to have a better understanding of themselves, what advice can you share to kind of help them a long way in their journey?
Human design, if you want to find out who you are, delving into it, getting a session, is really can be very helpful, because again, you start getting those steps forward. Finding what resonates with you. I always tell people also, what is most important is who we are, and inside, really stepping in and finding out what your truth is. I mean, we know, I remember, because, and the way that being the sensitive being that I was in 2020, I just remember just feeling like I was bombarded by all of this narrative coming at me from all different things. And it was a great time where I was like, okay, away from all of this, who am I? Who am I at my core? What is my inner truth telling me? And how do I feel aligned? So I did a lot of sitting in stillness. There's the saying, be still and know. And so I did a lot of that away from all the noise, got rid of the interference. So I think that's really important for us too. And, if you are feeling lost or stuck, yeah, human design's a great way, or MBTI, whatever resonates with you, if it's the Enneagram, whatever feels good, start out there, and then it might lead to another one or another one, allow yourself and trust your path and trust what comes up in your path, and those guideposts. And again, and also be present. Are you staying present so that you do get the whispers? We all have access to the whispers. We all have access to the quantum field. And so, being present, slowing down, getting away from the noise, putting the phone down, having some kind of morning ritual in the morning can help. Or, whenever the time is right for you to have the ritual, but having that time where you put away everything, you read something inspirational, you do a guided meditation, while you're drinking your coffee or your tea or whatever, and really so that you're setting up your day to be present. Even going outside and standing with your cup of coffee in the grass or on rocks and grounding and feeling the earth and drawing that energy up. Whatever works best for you, what feels good to you, I think is important, so that you are aligning with who you are, that inner truth, that your inner being, so that you can show up for other people in the best way possible.
Yeah. I love that, Heather, because, what I got from you, the takeaway I got, what you just shared is that,
Mm-hmm.
look, all of these modalities, whether it's personality or different modality tests like human design,
Mm-hmm.
it's helping you give a glimpse, look, are you vanilla, chocolate, or rocky road, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of how you receive that information, I like what you shared in that, look, whether it's human design, whether it's Enneagram, whether it's any of these other forms, everyone digests information differently. Do you want it in coffee form, as you mentioned? Do you want it in a milkshake form? Do you want it in ice cream form? You can also have vanilla in all different ways. Just have that curiosity. And it reminds me of that quote that I say often on my show, which is just, it's a Walt Whitman quote, which is be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah.
And if you just stay in that curiosity, if you want to have a better understanding of yourself, lean into that curiosity, be open-minded, because there's this whole world that we don't know. And when we have that experience, everyone will digest things differently. Just figure out which way works for you, right?
Yeah. And it's funny because it really is, and I can't remember because I'm going to hack up the quote like crazy, but when you're ready, the teacher appears, and
100%.
That's what, if you're stuck, just ask the universe, ask God, whatever your belief system is, ask, and it will appear. I love that they get curious, because I always tell my clients, I said, when you're getting caught in your head, just go, wait a second. I wonder, what would it look like if, and you just put, I wonder, ... and then just let the magic show up for you.
100%. It's funny that you're saying this, because my recent episode of 25 is creating momentum. It's about where the magic starts. I literally said, and a part of it is that you just have to raise your hand and ask, because when you do, the growth of your spiritual journey or embarking on this journey does not have to be a lonely endeavor.
No.
And it's so enriching when you can invite people along on your path to have questions, to ask, and you get that different perspective. And so what you say literally resonates with what I just recorded on my previous episode. So I just wanted
I love that.
Yeah. So I think we're in synchronicity there on that, Heather.
Oh yeah. Well, and I always tell people, I'm here to unlock your magic and your superpowers. That's what I do.
100%. Same here. We're in the same swimming pool, just in a different lane, but we're all going towards the same direction. So
heck yeah. And again, what resonates with you at this time and place, and is the next step on your journey.
Yeah. So Heather, one question I always ask my guests is, what is one thing you would tell yourself if the DeLorean in the Back to the Future movie was a real object where you can go back in time? What is one thing you would tell yourself if you had the ability to travel back 10 years ago that you would share with your younger self?
I really think just trust, surrender to the flow, and trust, and know that when you ask for the next right step, no matter how small or big it is, it will appear when the time is right. And also really just savor the moments and make sure that you are taking such good care of yourself, doing the self-care so that you are serving from that overflow rather than from your cup. I see in my own healing journey as I'm going, I can tell when I haven't been serving from the overflow, when I'm working with clients, and then all of a sudden the universe says, hey, I think it's time for you to slow down. And I'll get that little moment. So really trusting those moments and not getting frustrated that, now it's there, just trust that those whispers are telling you something, whether it's about your body or about your spirit path. It's just trusting that and knowing that that guidance is there to help you and to support you.
Yeah. Fantastic. So last question, Heather, where can our listeners find you?
Okay, so I have a website. It is integraholisticwellness.com. And I am on Instagram at Integra Holistic Wellness. I am on Facebook at the same, Integra Holistic Wellness. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not very good at LinkedIn, but it's under Heather J. Fischer-Page. But I am on LinkedIn. And I also have a podcast, the Integra Podcast. You can find me in all those different places. And I'm looking forward to having you on my show because I am excited to share what you do and who you are with people. So I loved being able to give people kind of this smorgasbord or this buffet of people to go, okay, you're ready to step forward. Here you go. Yeah. Find out who resonates with you. And I just love that this beautiful collaboration and ability to share because there's always enough for everyone.
Yeah. 100%. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, Heather. And so I'm definitely looking forward to our interview on your show. Yeah. But thank you for sharing that. Of course, I'm going to include all your information in our show notes so that our listeners have the ability to reach out to you. Is there a specific method on that you prefer? Whether is it directly, sending you a DM on Instagram? Do you prefer that way, or is it through just email? Do you have a preference in terms of how the audience can reach you?
I always respond to DMs on Instagram, as well as I love emails. I have a contact us page on my website that works, or contact us because, I do have my services on my website, but that doesn't always dive deeply enough into what you really need. And we can, taking 15 minutes to do a discovery session and go, okay, here's what I'm seeing for you. I think works really well. And being able to have that connection, because that tells, that establishes the rapport and the connection to see if we're right for each other. So,
And I just want to say this to my audience too. I would definitely take up Heather's offer on that. I personally have received a human design session with her. It's given me definitely more clarity in terms of who I am. And so if you resonate with Heather's sharing today and her words of wisdom, and if you just resonate with her energy, to lean in on that. And definitely, she's very intuitive, and I can definitely vouch for that. And so I'm just very glad to be able to connect with you, Heather, today. Thank you so much for joining us on our show. And I look forward to just growing our relationship and being on your show as well.
Yeah. And thank you so much for having me on your show. This has been such a beautiful hour of time. And I'm just, I feel very fortunate and blessed to be with you.
Thank you, Heather. Wow. I really hope you all enjoyed today's interview with Heather. The main takeaway I got from today's interview is this. As much as there's a place of unknown, there's also a place of awe. If you can bring more awareness to yourself and get into that place of awe and wonder, imagine the possibilities when you step into that. Regardless if it's personality tests like MBTI or DISC, if it's human design or quantum human design, stay curious and find one that resonates with you. If you enjoyed today's interview, please share this episode with your family or friends, anyone that you feel that can benefit. Hit that subscribe button for this Boom Vision podcast so that we can thrive together by building success on a rock-solid foundation of our mind, body, and soul. Until next time, folks, be kind to yourself, be in the light, be you. Thank you so much for tuning in to my Boom Vision podcast. If you'd like to find out more about me and this podcast, head over to benjaminyeh.com. That's spelled BenjaminYeh.com. If you haven't already, click subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.